well.
All right, let's go. Here we go. Here we go. Going live. Going live.
Yeah,
We're live. We're live.
we are
All
indeed.
right. All right. So it's Friday. It's Friday. Happy Friday. Happy Friday.
It's Friday for sure. And you're gonna do an audio check for me, right? We're gonna do the low
Yeah.
tech.
Yeah.
Todd goes
I've
and
got my phone
checks
now.
his phone because Doug was messing with audio settings 90 seconds before
If you
showtime.
could see what it's like before we go live, you would just be happy.
Today was not
Amazed.
smooth. I think we can be fair about that.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Cool.
Okay,
We're
good. Yeah, thank you for that.
Okay.
So,
Cool. So Doug.
yeah. Hi,
This week.
Todd.
This week. I'm just gonna dive right in. Let's
Yeah,
dive
go.
right in. I one of my most awaited announcements. I've been at Microsoft for almost 9 years. And I would say this is right up there. Things I've been waiting for. We announced Azure Purview this week. And what is Azure Purview? Azure Purview is data governance. Really is at the end of the day what this is. And it's integrated across Azure Data Services, across Microsoft Information Protection and 365, Power BI. So it's bringing all the things together, a data catalog, information protection, data labeling, data lineage. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. This is becoming table stakes. Table stakes. The world inside an organization more complex, not less.
You're not at all excited about this. By the way, by way of introduction, in case you are new to tune in, I'm Doug Spooner. That's Todd Kidda. We probably should have done at least that. And I'm covering Teams and security stuff today, and I think I got on Azure, some Azure AD stuff. But you just were so excited about Purview, you couldn't wait.
We've got some folks in the chat saying we've got to echo. Anything we can do, Doug.
Yeah, okay, I'll mute and I'll fight the echo battle. We probably do. That's probably legit. You keep going, I'll mute and figure it out.
Helps. Marcus says helps with these things. Okay, cool. So Azure Purview. A little bit into this. So really, from an M365 perspective, this touches on both, like I said, Power BI and Microsoft Information Protection, because the information types as well as the labeling carry over into Purview, which has been something that Doug and I have been talking about needing and wanting, because I've always felt like Doug's side of the world, right? Where if I live in the analytics side and like the data, like rectangular and semi-structured data, Doug lives in the kind of document email world. His world's always had really good tooling and capabilities and in M365, whereas I think Travis says the echo went away.
Yeah. So it turns out if you duplicate an audio stream, that you get echo.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. Thanks, Travis. Thanks, Marcus. You guys are great helping us troubleshoot real time.
Oh, damn. All right. Keep going.
Yeah, man. So just showing this is just a first kind of tease preview. We went live, like I said, with the announcement and the public preview this week. This has been being worked on internally for quite a while, and it's based on a lot of the work that we've done inside of Microsoft to manage our own data estate, using things like Apache Atlas and the data labeling things that are built into M365, and bringing that all together. We've had something in market for a while. We've kind of danced around this in Power BI and Azure data services with things like data labeling and for MCAS, and for we have something in market called the Azure Data Catalog V1. This is I would call this the sequel. I wouldn't call this a V2. I'd call this a sequel, if that makes any sense. This is something almost entirely new and really much more amazing than what we had in market before. So I'm just so jazzed about this. It's ridiculous, especially because it's going to be working across solution areas, and there's a lot of extensibility kind of baked in here as well. There's a lot of APIs around this, and this is such a good foundation. I can't wait to see this mature over the next year or so, right? So I don't know, Doug, did you have any chance to look at this? Do you have any thoughts on this? Because this, like I said, this touches kind of both sides.
I didn't. I skimmed, not enough to go through. I was pleased enough that it had our data labeling alignment.
Oh yeah.
So I just went, okay. I mean, I get it. This is more your world than mine, if we're totally honest about it, right? Well, but you sent me the note you sent me last night was our worlds finally collided, right? Like we have a unified labeling policy syntax. Now, of course, you may have differentiated labels, but you may also unify them, right? Sure. And so it's a Venn diagram. So I want to make sure people understand when they say, oh, you can do, you have this alignment with the Azure Information Protection Labeling. That's not a requirement for full alignment because you may have different needs.
Absolutely.
But the fact that you can say this is confidential, this is that, is good, I think.
And right now, I mean, just to kind of be fair, the data sources that are available for kind of first class scanning, because that's the verb we use, and verb and a noun, is scanning and a scan of your data sources. They're really, not surprisingly, Microsoft and Azure focused today, right? And that's gonna, one, we already have APIs that are there to address some of that. If you're using like everyone else on the planet, you're not just using Azure data sources, right? So there's ways to import and to integrate. And of course, that's going to expand as well. The announcement was only this week. So this is, I know a good foundation when I see one, and I'm pretty pumped. So, all right, I'm going to move on from that. And actually, I'm going to jump ahead to one of these other, which one is it? Here it is. Because this is in the same vein of governance and data, getting your arms around your data state. New admin APIs. This is kind of two announcements in one. New admin APIs for Power BI, as well as Service Principal Auth. So Service Principal Auth, this is basically pretty straightforward. Being able to give your service, your Azure AD applications, Service Principal authentication capabilities to your Power BI.
I want to jump in on that for like just 1 second and say that's super important. The retirement of service accounts and the evolution towards service principals, right? The scoping, the control mechanisms, the ability for user impersonation versus service and API access cannot be understated from a security impact standpoint. And so the more of these we have, the first you get this beautiful automation surface, right? And I had somebody ask me the other day, they're like, well, I want to be able to do multi-factor authentication against these users in order to run script automations. I'm like, my first guidance is don't do that. Don't do that. Like, I can tell you ways to achieve that outcome, but don't. Just do it the right way. Go do service principals, make graph calls. Like, it's richer, surface. It's repeatable. You can run it through governance. You can have it in dev, test, and prod. You can do source code control over it. You know what I mean? Like, it's legit. And service principals are a huge part of that story for me for modern management and control.
So, and we had to add this, right? Right? I mean, we really needed to add this, first of all, just end of sentence. We also really needed to add it for the integration between Purview, which we just talked about in Power BI.
Yeah.
But I actually love how we called out the story of Calibra. So Calibra is now, really, I would say, a competitive product, right, to Purview, right? So it's something that Purview would compete with, right? I think, and but I love how we called them out and we really made their story light up, because Calibra is very established, right? They've been around for a long while, and they have a long legacy in the kind of the on-premises, data estate management and cataloging and those kinds of things. So now they're able to integrate with Power BI, get the same rich kind of lineage, workspace information, and metadata from Power BI that we have in Purview. So I'm a big fan of this because this just enables, no matter what you're using.
Yeah.
Now Power BI is a much more rich part of your governance story, no matter what data management piece that you're using. So that's awesome. I love that.
A companion observation. Philosophically, we're doing the same thing with the intelligence security graph, right? And a lot of the other things we trigger off of. Like, we build products to innovate on top of it. We don't do a data lock around it. We're not that We don't do that anymore as much. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's sometimes we simply cannot open things up, but wherever we can, we do. And it's been like there's an equal access to data for the events, and then we have to differentiate on how well we do great things with them. But we
I think
don't.
more often than not, when we haven't opened up the gates, it's not that philosophically we don't want to. It's just that we haven't
Yeah,
yet.
or there's a limiter. Yeah, there's either a resource
Yes.
limiter, a market limiter, or a technical limiter, or something else. But yeah, I like the
And really,
philosophy
kind of
behind
hit
this.
on that last one is we've made a dramatic change to kind of now move on beyond the service principal piece into the unified scanning APIs for Power BI. This is a pretty dramatic change in the way that the API works. And basically, now we've implemented this idea, again, of a scan, right? I use the term scan in terms of context of Purview, but now this is in terms of the Power BI APIs. So basically allowing you, right, to call these APIs asynchronously, and kind of you're going to need to do the initial kind of like give me everything in my tenant, right? Tell me all my workspaces with all the things inside of them, all the data sets, data flows, reports, who owns them, blah, 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 their endorsement, sensitivity labels, right? Give me all of that. I'm going to put that in a repository somewhere, right? Wherever you want. And then do incremental scans, at a later date. And I think if I remember correctly, the incremental scan can happen up to 30. Let me do a control F for 30. Yeah, here we go. Incremental scan supports up to 30 days back, and not before the rollout, which is December 10th. So, kind of, and this really gives you a very, very prescriptive guidance for how to call these APIs, meaning, you're going to divide your calls up into 100 workspaces at a time. Here's the order of calls. So there's a little bit of orchestration you're going to need to do. You could do this with Logic Apps. You could do this with Power Automate. You could do this with functions. You could do this with Data Factory. You could write some Python script, PowerShell, right? It's kind of up to you how you use this and where you put this. And I think, what I would anticipate is to see, you're probably going to see a bunch of solutions pop up around this, either on GitHub or out in the community. And you're probably going to see us build some stuff. I'm speculating right at this point, but the APIs are there, so this is pretty exciting. Really a big week for governance, as you can see. More governance stuff. So I'm really looking forward to a day, by the way, when I don't have to talk about classic workspaces anymore in Power BI. We're not there yet, but really quickly, one of the things we have added is the ability for admins to upgrade workspaces. So before, the workspace admin had to do that, but that really delegated probably too much responsibility out to a lot of people. Now Power BI admins can go and select the workspaces that are classic and upgrade them. Also, a roadmap update, meaning starting in February 21, we're going to be removing the ability to create or edit content packs in classic workspaces. Move on. It's time to move on. I guess that's all I'll say about that. We've said that about 1,000 times. So this one is kind of, again, two announcements in one. Full report attachment for subscriptions for Power BI Premium. So, and this one's kind of a no-brainer, where you have a report in Power BI Premium. You want someone to get a PDF on a daily, weekly basis. You want to receive that in your inbox, and it's just there without having to go and click on a link. Now that's here. The other thing to call out and kind of remind, if you have a premium per user license, you can subscribe people that only have a pro license to that Power BI report, and they'll receive that attachment. So to me, that's kind of a gimme, right? Because you're kind of taking advantage of premium capability without being a premium user. You still have to have a pro license, but there's a lot of folks that I've been working with that are E5, right? That have E5 across the board where this would apply. So you can get paginated reports in your inbox, not in the service, without having necessarily the workspace be in a premium capacity. So that's pretty cool. So I like this. Oh, the other one is removing this one was kind of a little almost an aside, but you have the ability to hide the preview image option, and I think this one will be big for like healthcare, right? Where there's potentially PHI.
Yeah, or just sensitive information of any type, right? It doesn't really matter. Financial services, whatever, right?
But this one comes up a lot in healthcare and subscriptions, right? It's like you're sending me this preview, but this preview might have sensitive information in it.
Yeah.
So let me not do that. So now we have a checkbox to enable that. That's an important one. I'm only gonna go. I'm not gonna go through the rest of these, Doug, because I want to make sure you have adequate time.
You can
But
go a couple more, right? Large model and Power. That's a good one, right? So we can just.
We've talked about this one a lot. Basically, Power BI Premium, allowing there we go. It's hard to say. Models larger than 10 gigabytes. So this is GA, and with some additional capabilities. So being able to convert between the small, we're calling it the small and large data set format, multi-geo support. So you no longer have to kind of tie that to your home tenant region. And then being able to even BYOK for your large models. So I thought that one was interesting as well. Good stuff. We talked about that. Dataverse. So Power BI being able to direct query against Dataverse. This is great because basically at the end of the day, that's a SQL kind of endpoint at the back end. So if you're using Dataverse, being able to do that.
Just for those who aren't tracking, Dataverse is the new name for the Common Data Service, which was in the middle. There was a data something else it was called, and
for like 5 minutes.
For like 5 minutes, I think due to trademark restrictions of some kind.
The artist, the product formerly known as.
I do think we should spend some time at some point differentiating that, talking about the value proposition to it. I think it's an important part of the citizen developer strategy, and this integration is a key part for reporting against those citizen developer capabilities.
And I think I'm gonna save the Power Automate stuff for next week.
All right.
I have a couple more, but I want to give you time. But I think you're right. I think it might be worthwhile stepping back out, especially now that the ecosystem of the capabilities in the Microsoft toolset for Common Data Service or Dataverse or whatever is now pretty broad. Meaning, like in Data Factory, I can write to the Common Data Service. In Power BI, I can now direct query. Like, how does all this tie together? How should I be thinking about using the Common Data Service for solutions or in my enterprise? So I think that's probably a good conversation. Cool. Right. So I'm gonna hand it over to you, sir.
All right. So I'm gonna go just double check the audio on this side, make sure I don't, as we do a scene transition, that I have you and me. I hope. Can you give me a little audio bump there for me, just to?
I can. Yeah, I'm gonna open this.
Yeah, you look good. Okay. So, but if you can double check it for me, that wouldn't be unappreciated. Okay, so I'm cold opening with a little SharePoint Pitstop. There was a November Pitstop announcement, and we were off for a couple weeks as we did Thanksgiving and all sorts of other stuff. It's funny watching you have that up to your ear to see whether or not this is still working. There was there's a couple interesting things inside of the announcements. I think it's worth a scrub. However, the biggest thing for me was there was an announcement in here, which I think is interesting performance related. There's a site performance extension for Chromium you can put in that'll come back and render your site performance characteristics for what's happening on a SharePoint site and give you some interesting details on top of it. Now, this doesn't have an API surface, but it occurred to me we might be able to use a UI flow in order to programmatically grab that, which I thought would be kind of interesting, right? So we're having that video scaling issue where you keep changing sizes, so I'll keep fixing that as we go. But I thought that'd be kind of interesting to try it. If somebody wants to try that, or we'll try that, or I'll get around to it sooner or later. But it'd be an interesting UI flow example to say, can I go through and provide a manifest of things and have it go out and automate that, and then tell me if, you know what I'm saying, like kind of a user experiential checker against core SharePoint sites as they evolve. Did I lose you? I think I've lost Todd. All right, we'll keep on rolling. Hopefully the show's still on the air. It looks like it is. Oh, he's trying to call back in. All right, we'll do this live on the air. Why not? We'll see if we can answer Todd's call on top of this. All right, we'll see if we got you back. Do we have you back, Todd?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah. And your video's moving again. It looks like we got some audio from you and a little thumbnail, so we'll put it around. It looks like the call got hung up, but I kept going. So hopefully the show kept rolling on. All right. So we had I will fix my Skunkworks home studio next week. All right. So that's an interesting one for performance characteristics on top of SharePoint. There's a couple other announcements on some web part stuff on it, and Microsoft lists, undo, redo, and a few other things I thought were really interesting from some at-a-glance updates. So it's worth a skim on top of it. I'm not going to cover all the Teams announcements because almost everybody knew them, right? In the interest of time, we'll focus on things people maybe don't go. Breakout rooms went GA. Noise canceling, noise suppression, the new views in Teams rooms, holiday party guidance, polls in Teams meeting. Okay, are we surprised there's a lot of features in Teams? You got it. right? And I don't mean to dismiss any of those things, but those get well advertised. So I kind of wanted to go to the backstage on a couple of things on top of it. The phone system got some updates if you're not using Teams sidecar devices and stuff. I got one of the Lenovo like the Teams display. Got the new firmware on. Interesting device. I tested some of the video and everything else. I'm not sure, given my home office, how practicable it is, but I think there is a community for it. Well, I know there is, of people on top of it. It allows like Bluetooth pairing of your favorite device, and it's a dedicated Teams calling device. And with the unified sign-in thing, it's kind of interesting. So I'd say check those out for those who actually have an executive office. I mean, maybe its time is not right now in the land of COVID, right? But if you want a dedicated calling device, there's a lot of software updates just showing the commitment to that. However, there were a couple of ones on the backs channel that were maybe a little more Flash Friday-ish from a Mind the Gap standpoint. And this is one you and I both talked about. When we were doing show prep, we found this one. And that's the Teams, the public preview of the Teams activity feed API on top of the Microsoft Graph, right? So now why would we care about such a critter on top of it? Well, essentially, you can now insert notifications into people's activity feeds, and then users get that. And I'm an activity feed hound. Are you? Like, I think a lot of people who get frustrated with team volumes don't effectively use the activity feed.
Yeah, and honestly, I think, that's maybe feedback for kind of new user onboarding, right? And how to really make that front and center, because I think that can make your experience and your life inside of Teams much more effective.
And I think learning to use like some of the command bar stuff, like when you're in a meeting, just to be able to drop a note off to someone and stuff, like spending like a half hour on like some of the, I don't know, core of the tool can really make a huge difference.
I do think Teams is now at a maturity level where it's easy to use, right? If you're a first-time user, but to become a power user takes some investment of curiosity.
It's like, and I haven't done this in a while, but I think I told you once I sat through a K-12 education on Windows, like where a school teacher showed how to configure Windows for teaching a class, and I was like, I am not a good Windows person. This school teacher kills it, right? And so because they had this layout by all the beautiful tile layouts and organization, they could find everything. And I was like, wow. I actually took a screenshot of it. I still have it as like great start menu to remind myself of like how you can tune your environment in order to do it. So there's something said about spending a little bit of time. But then if you're doing end user readiness or champions programs, it's important to sit down and figure out how do we integrate our stuff for the most usability approach. So if you are building some things or integrating some stuff, this one matters. So I would say pay attention to that one.
Yeah, and I would say that Teams apps can have varying levels of integration into Teams, right? Mm-hmm. Very superficial as far as just like basically an iframe type approach, right? And then this kind of stuff is what makes it super useful. I mean, wasn't a person that would go and check Yammer on a regular basis, right? Just judge me if you want, right? But
for as much love as Steve Wynn has given our show to come on and talk about it, it just wasn't in context for you, right? It just wasn't there.
It wasn't in. That's the perfect way to put it. With Yammer alerts in Teams now, Yammer is in context with me now.
And it makes perfect sense. The communities is right there alongside your Teams, is right there alongside the other core things that you think. The application surface is integrated on top of it. Awesome stuff on top of it. Okay, so a cool extension that allows maybe a little more thoughtful integration of the things you're building and maybe a more user-friendly approach on top of it. Now this one, again, if you were looking at the feature side, you may have missed what I think is a critically important announcement, and that is that they changed how Teams pre-release channels are going to be executed. Were you aware of this shift at all?
I think so.
Yeah,
at least as a person inside of Microsoft.
Yeah, so the beta channel, right, and private preview channel and public preview channel. So essentially, they had this previously Teams had a different cadence from your M365 cadence, right? So what they're essentially doing is lining things up, right? And they previously had a Ring 1.5, and now they've sort of simplified it and aligned it with the Office and Windows framework. So it kind of makes sense from a holistic change management standpoint.
You don't have to internalize like multiple release strategies.
Well, yeah, we'll just leave it at that. Well, yeah, exactly. Because if you're like, hey, Microsoft, thanks for the consistent, eventing on changes, but can you make the cadence line up for a little bit of a more of a thing? Now, again, we're still going to have these leading edge channels where all these features are going to be there, including security and productivity updates, whatever it is. But organizations get to set their own posture around that stuff. And before, we were making you fragment your posture across our state. This represents another motion to try and sort of clean that up.
Lovely.
Okay, my last one for the week, pulling from the deep side of it, is I think an amazing announcement, and that is that the Azure AD Application Proxy, which it's one of the first things we ever covered on this show. Greg Kostick and I actually did a Channel 9 broadcast, and we got, I don't say mocked, but we got criticized by internal marketing people saying it was too techie. And it got like 14,000 views in its first week that was out there, because Azure AD Application Proxy is an insanely useful thing. That's like saying a presentation on a new auto-adaptive tip screwdriver is boring. It's not. Like, how many times have you been scrubbing around for the right screwdriver to solve a problem? Well, the Azure AD App Proxy is an application access screwdriver. It allows secure presentation through either a public or a controlled namespace of on-prem resources, both intranet, like your users, and potentially extranet users through the B2B invites, to map them in, replacing the old extranet DMZ thing that we all used to hang outside the firewall, right, with our one-way trust and all that stuff. So you can take those core scenarios, and they've been chipping away. First was just web proxy with Kerberos constrained delegation. So if you had Azure AD integrated, boom, right? And then along about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, along came the terminal services stuff, right, for integrated terminal services control for presentation of remote desktop session. Check. Now you've got Azure AD Application Proxy supports header-based authentication.
Yeah.
And this one is huge because you get to do transformations on top of anything that's SAML or OIDC. So anything you would supply to SAML or OIDC, you can do your transformations and provide access for on top of that. So I like this quote from Mondelez, right, that talks about, hey, it allows us to migrate our header-based workloads to Azure AD, moving us one step closer to unified access. We've been able to retire our third-party header-based auth tools, and it saved us a small fortune. Thank you. That is essentially what this means for me. If you have a third-party header-based auth tool that you were previously using, you can kill it if you own the entitlement to Azure AD Application Proxy. And I always like simplified, better audit surfaces with a good user experience that reduce my IT budget. Those are all my favorite things when it comes to feature releases inside of a product on top of it. So they have a nice example on top of this one of doing an on-prem PeopleSoft conversion on top of it,
right,
where they come through, talk about a connector group for deployment. They show an example of header-based attribute mappings on top of it, how it's going to do the header sign-on with configuration, what headers are going to be provided, the user principal name, and the rest of those things that are on top of it. And then you see that application presented directly alongside. So you think about the combination of this with MCAS and the MCAS DLP announcements that were integrated, you really do have this amazing user experience and control experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's my favorite security, is when it really works for people and you get the audit control reporting. There was also an announcement this week on increased skim skip integration through a third party for application provisioning, so some other stuff on top of that. So essentially blowing out the SaaS provisioning and on-prem application control. I think this largely rounds out the estate of on-prem application access components.
That's awesome.
From a technology stack standpoint. So yes, there probably are some.
We're done. There's nothing else to do.
No, there's always something to do, right? You're always missing a feature or control or something someone wish you did. But if you look at like the big blockers and the things that you had, this is one that required a third-party investment if you needed to do it, right, and you frequently did. And now what they're saying is you don't. So I think this is a huge one. I didn't see it get as much love as I thought it would online. So I thought if I had to talk about something this week, something I want really people to pick, because this really is that bridgehead for integrated applications access. So, and remember, you can go then get the single sign-on URLs and embed them wherever you want, put them on our pages. You don't even think about that anymore. If you think about browsing around Microsoft, like whether you're going to our travel portal or any of these other third-party things that we use for benefits provider stuff, you and I just click on stuff. And if you're a security person, you carefully watch the URL. They're all going through these SSO
the redirects.
Yeah, these SSO redirects, and we just get this beautiful seamless access. We see our credentials pop up, we also what? Why am I suddenly being asked? You know who I am. I've already proven it, and with full control, right? And if you look at some of the MCAS DLP and the session controls everyone has, like you really have this amazing control estate now for SaaS and on-prem applications through Azure.
It is pretty amazing when you think back to the way that it was, right? And then you see the way it is or can be. It's the difference between now and 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Is stunning.
Shout out to Brad Dupay, who's now moved on to other things, but it was like, do you know who's accessing your data, right? Is it really Todd, right? Are you comfortable with the device that they're doing that on, right? So it's Todd, but are you comfortable with the device and location they're doing? Can you protect your data at rest and in transit? Do you have the compliance, auditability, visibility, and attestations you need in order, the surrounding requirements and event logs and everything else you need to do it? And do you have a great user experience? Right? Is it you? Are we okay with you doing it where it is? Is our information controlled and protected the whole time it has? Do we have the compliance, audit, and attestation around it to prove those things? Not just set a policy and believe, but to be able to prove that and to be able to have the underlying attestations our business needs, and do we have a good user experience? Those big 5 pillars. I'm always looking, right? And this one really strikes this application access estate. So there you go. A little roundup of a little more. So. And then I look at like advanced things, like do we have good change management? Do we have good cadence for that? We really rounded out that polish on that pillar 4, which is the audit, accessibility, governance, control stuff, right? Like that's where the maturity curve's really been coming up. But there were still a few of those scenario 5, the user experience scenarios, where in order to have a great user experience, you still need some third-party stuff. We keep chipping away at that. And adding it to the core product. There's no additional licensure. So if you're in Azure, if you're entitled to the Azure AD App Proxy, you own this. All right. So if you haven't looked at the Azure AD App Proxy, and its uptick in my customers is odd. It's not like some have like, yeah, I get it and I've done it. Others are like, nah, I just haven't really embraced it yet. And I don't know why. So I keep pushing because it's a huge entitlement, I think.
I agree. It's one of those things where I think, you see it more than I do, right? But where once you get it, it's like, holy crap, why haven't I been investing in this and looking at this for years now?
All right. Well, we're 3 minutes over, and I want to be respectful at least somewhat. It's been a couple weeks though since we were on the air. We'll be back.
When I think of Doug, I think of someone who wants to be respectful somewhat. Yes.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the love. That's how I feel about everybody, right? I want to be somewhat respectful, but at the same time, I want push. I want change. Like I want stuff to move. So if my respectful means people will secure their stuff, then I'll be less respectful than I would otherwise be. All right. Because I care more about that than almost. Geez, man. When you get behind the scenes, of some of these security investigations, you just start going, really. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Kidda. You have a great week. We're back next Friday, right?
I don't know any reason why the answer is no.
Yeah, the week after would be a holiday week, so we'll probably have a little hiatus over the, over the holidays, but we'll announce that next week. Otherwise, everyone out there, be safe, be good, and secure, and present, and BI, and collaborate.
Yes, all of those things.
All of those
things. All right. Take care.
All right, y'all.
Goodbye.